Right, finally, we're going to do the best end. Probably one of the most expensive cuts on the lamb, so it's imperative we don't damage the eye of this when we actually do it. And the eye is that centre bit there, really lean, really tender. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to take one side off and do a French trim rack of lamb, creating a guard of honour. And then I'm going to take the other side off, bone that out, show you where the lamb cannon comes from, and then roll it into a noisette. So, first thing, I'm going to saw down the loin. And when you're sawing, because you're sawing through bone, you've got a noise, and then you listen, a butcher listens for that sawing to end, and you can hear the meat ripping. That tells you you're at the eye of the meat. And we do the same the other side. So you start, you can hear that sawing. And then the eye of the meat as you get to it. So we're going to turn him round. We're going to remove one side, like so. And then we're going to come to the other side and remove the other side, like so. Now, when I've removed that, we talked earlier about a friend of ours called the Paddy Whack, which is a gristle that runs down the back of the spine from the neck all the way down the spine. Now that Paddy Whack exists there as well. Important you don't leave that on the best end. So when I do a French trim rack, I remove that little bit of skirt muscle, we turn him over, you've got a little bit of the blade bone where we took the shoulders off. That bit of blade bone has to be removed, like so. So that comes out. We then turn him over, we cut parallel, an eye plus an eye again, and remove the back bit of the flank. That will not get wasted. That will end up being minced burgers, or what you can use that for, which is fantastic. You mince it up, mix it with your herbs, you stuff your breast of lamb or your shoulder of lamb with the farce you make out of it. So it does not get wasted at all. We now remove what we call the bark, which is on the back. Now if this was spring lamb, which is about 5 months old, you're talking May, June, July time, the bark is very, very thin. It's very light. You can actually just score it and leave it on. As you come into the season and you hit your summer lamb and your autumn lamb, these lambs are moving up 8, 9, 10 months. This bark, which sits between the fleece and the fat of the animal, gets slightly thicker, slightly tougher. So what you do is you remove it. And that's what I've just done here. I've removed it. You can see that's a lot tighter, a lot thicker, so it gets removed. As the lambs come to the end of the year, you're looking at 11, 12, 13 months. That's when you get your hoggetty lambs, when they get the second set of teeth. That is when it gets tougher. And then you're breeding mutton lambs. Your mutton lambs are your 2 years and over, and their bark will be a lot tougher and have to be removed. And with the mutton lamb, you'll have to spend a longer time cooking. It's a slower cook, great for curries, great for flavours. We make a curried goat sausage, a curried mutton sausage, and we do a curried goat sausage, but we do a curried mutton sausage, which absolutely works fantastic. Now, what I'm doing is what we call French trimming. So I'm going up and down each side of every single bone to form the fingers that are then used in the guard of honour. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8 bones there. So that's ideal because you can do a guard of honour 2, 4 bones. For decorative purposes, I just lightly crisscross score the fat. It doesn't make its flavour profile difference, but when you do the guard of honour and you roast it up and you glaze it up, it just gives it that wonderful look. And then I come down the middle. Now the art there is to look at your best end. It's to look at that rack and say, where is the middle? Because the middle might be further to one bone than the other. Important you get the middle. Then to do your guard of honour, you interlink the bones, like so. We can put chef's hats on it. That gives you your guard of honour. Let's move them out of the way for a minute. Right. Right, the other side of the best end, we're going to trim that bit of skirt out, and this one we're going to bone out totally. So what we're going to do is come down the finger bones like so. We're going to lift the eye up and come down the back of the rib bones like so. That gives us a boneless best end. You've still got the blade there, so you make sure you remove that bit of blade bone. Important, because it's inedible. Last thing you want is that to be eaten. Now, we're going to do an orzette in a minute, but first of all, I'm going to do what we call a cannon of lamb. And that is where we remove the eye of the lamb like so. And then what we do is we come down the seam, and this is probably the most expensive way of buying lamb. Used a lot on banqueting, corporate events, but because you've removed the eye and you're removing every bit of fat and silver skin, see how that silver skin lifts up? That comes off, and you're left with just an eye of the meat. That is called a cannon of lamb. Very delicate. I mean, myself, I'll just slice that thinly, bit of salt and pepper, little bit of oil, beautiful carpaccio of lamb. We're going to roll it into an orzette. So that goes in with my trim. So we've now got the fat part of it. So what we're going to do with the fat, we're going to remove the bark to start with. So once again, you're putting the point of the knife under the bark and then lifting the bark to remove it. But you want to leave that nice fat there, because the fat is going to roll around that cannon of lamb, and when you actually cook it very pink, it'll eat absolutely gorgeous. So we now trim out, so we're getting nice and thin. Like so, and then we're going to just tap this out. So we take a fat basher, and this is just making the fat nice and thin. Like so. We then take the lamb cannon, we lay it in the middle. Square it, roll it, and we roll it round till the fat meets itself. Cut that off, square him up, square him up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a thing called French tying. French tying or lazy tying. Because you've got that cannon, it's a delicate eye, a little bit of fat round it. You don't want to damage it, so you're not going to tie it tight. What you're going to do is tie it fairly loosely. So when we French tie, we start the same as normal butchery tying. Under the back, over the top, through the hole, tie a knot, and then we pull that just so it's tight enough to hold the fat on. We tie him off, but we only cut the excess bit of string off. We leave that attached. Then we twist it twice round our hand, through, put a second string. Twice round our hand, through, put a third string. Twice round our hand. Now you can see why it's called lazy time, because you're not having to do a slip knot all the time. You're literally just rolling it round your hand, tying it off. And then finally, one at the end there, and we tie him off. And then we just cut that off, like so, square it up, and then that can be then cut into an Noisette lamb. So what you've got there is a nice eye of the lamb, lovely bit of fat round it. Show them the pan, minute and a half, gorgeous.